I find reviewing scrambled paragraphs, especially by seeing somebody do it, is much more helpful. It's so difficult to learn it from textbooks and read the explanations. They're just really difficult to get a hang of, whereas seeing it, I think as tutors have known for a long time, is much better. And that's where they are able to really add a lot of value for their money, is by showing firsthand to people how the scrambled paragraphs are solved and what their logic and approach is. And fortunately, we're able to do that too and add that same value, just without the same type of extra cost. So with that, let's begin our exam, Verbal B. Paragraph 1. Tycho Brahe, a 17th century Danish astronomer, is more famous for his odd and arrogant personality than for any contribution he made to our knowledge of the stars and planets. First step is look for the second or the follow-on sentence for that. That discovery was made by his assistant. No, that doesn't seem to follow the assessment that he was a quirky, arrogant guy. The disagreement turned into, no, that seems too specific to be sentenced to. As a student, he got into an argument with another student. That could be. That is an example of him being arrogant and odd. Later in his life, most likely that's probably toward the end given the timing, later, he made a replacement nose for himself. Again, that seems too specific an example. So I think S is probably the best follow-on to that. He was an odd and arrogant personality. As a student, he got into an argument with another student about who was the better mathematician. Well, I think right away that sentence R is the best follow-on there, because the disagreement corresponds to getting into an argument. And that argument resulted into a sword fight, and part of Brahe's nose was sliced off. So what would follow that? Well, he made a replacement nose. That's an obvious follow-on sentence to R. If his nose was sliced off in R, then in T, he made a replacement nose for himself out of alloy gold and silver, which he reportedly glued to his face. That leaves us with only two possibilities left, Q or U, for the next sentence. What's the better follow-on? That discovery was made by his assistant, Johannes Kepler. Well, what discovery? I'm not sure what that's referring to, so it doesn't sound like that's going to be the right one. Later in his life, his arrogance may have kept him from playing a part in one of the greatest astronomical discoveries in history. That seems to fit. The first three sentences were about his odd and arrogant behavior as youth. U seems to transition later in his life. His arrogance, the same idea, and it kept him from making a great discovery. And Q seems to follow that because that discovery, which directly follows the astronomical discoveries he quote-unquote missed from being arrogant, that discovery was made by his assistant, Johannes Kepler. Well, I think that order is pretty good, and that's what we'll go with. Paragraph 2. Most cowboys of North and South America lacked the necessary chemicals to soften animal hides into leather, so they often used rough, untreated hides or rawhide for their gear. What's the follow-on to that? Let's try to find that second sentence. The result was a soft, supple piece of leather for making reins. No, that doesn't seem to follow because they said they couldn't make softened leather. The strip was pulled through the slot repeatedly. No, that sounds like a too specific example to be a follow-on sentence. They took a round piece of wood, such as a broom handle, cut a lengthwise slot through the middle. That also sounds too specific an example. However, the gauchos, the cowboys of South America, created an effective method for softening strips of rawhide. That seems to fit. That looks like a contrasting statement to the first sentence, where the first sentence says most cowboys lacked the necessary chemicals to soften leather. However, the gauchos of South America created such an effective method for softening rawhide. So I think that's our best follow-on sentence. Then the last one, U, was the gauchos then rubbed a rawhide strip with saddle soap and inserted one end in the slot. I think we've got the second sentence here. Let's see what the best follow-up for that would be. The result was a soft, supple... No, not the result. That's probably the end of the different examples, given the result. The strip was pulled through the slot repeatedly. They took a round piece of wood, such as a broom handle, cut a lengthwise slot through the middle of it, and filled the edges of the slot until they were smooth. That sounds like it's more likely the case. However, the gauchos of South America created an effective method. They took a round piece of wood, such as a broom handle, cut a lengthwise slot, and filled the edges of the slot until they were smooth. Again, the result probably does not follow S. That's probably further down, so let's just put it down there for a second. The strip was pulled through the slot repeatedly with a stick. Well, that could possibly follow. There is a slot mentioned in S, and there is a slot mentioned in R, but what is the strip? They don't really mention the strip before us. It's not a strip. They're not introducing it, which would be the difference between and the. It seems like they've already introduced the strip by this time. So how about U? That also includes slot, which connects it to S, but this time it's toward the end, and it does introduce a strip, a rawhide strip. So this seems to fit a bit better. They took a round piece of wood, such as a broom handle, and cut lengthwise through the middle of it, and filled the slot until they were smooth. The gouchers then rubbed a rawhide strip with saddle soap and inserted one end into the slot that was already introduced, and now they're introducing a rawhide strip. So that seems to be a good follow-on sentence. And then the strip was pulled through the slot repeatedly, so R now follows U quite well, with the strip going through the slot mentioned at the end of U, with the stick held at a slight angle so that it took effort to draw the strip through. And that leaves our final sentence, which fits well. Q, the result was a soft, supple piece of leather for making reins. I think we'll go with that. That looks good.